This episode of 6'5 Guys is brought to you by Defiance Machine, defying tradition with innovation. Our Bros Rifles, precision on another level. JC Steel Targets, the industry leader in quality AR-500 steel targets.
Welcome to 6'5 Guys. Hi, I'm Steve Lawrence.
And I'm Ed Mobley.
As you can see before us, we have an array of scopes, and we're responding to viewer feedback. We had some folks interested in hearing our perspectives on optics and scopes. So we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to talk a little bit about our journey in using different optics on rifle scopes.
Yeah, I mean, there are so many comprehensive reviews out there. We're not even attempting to duplicate that. But as we've seen, and as you mentioned, people are just interested why we made the choices that we made. And so that's what we're going to share with you.
Yeah.
And we're going to start with some of the scopes that I've used, and then we're going to switch up and look at some of the scopes that you've used.
't right. Now you have, it looks to me over here on the end, a classic rifle scope. What do we have here?
No, this is actually a new prototype.
Okay.
No, the reason why I brought this was actually the first scope that I had. I had it actually on this rifle right here, the Anschutz Model 1813. It's an old Lyman target spot scope, and here I was a young kid and somebody who's getting out of the sport due to age. Let me have it.
It has kind of that very long, sleek look, similar to ones that are reminiscent of what Carlos Hathcock had on his rifle.
Yeah, he had a Untitled scope to my knowledge, but it was very similar. But the reason why I bring this out is it really gives you an appreciation for modern scope design, because all the adjustments were done externally. It's a fixed 20 power scope. There's no nitrogen or argon fill or anything like that. And the crosshair is literally that. It is a crosshair made out of fine wire. You can actually see it when you disassemble it, and believe it, I have disassembled this. And it again, as I mentioned, fixed 20 power, but because the adjustments are external, if you put any pressure on the scope,
your adjustments go off.
It actually presses down. So some of the things we take for granted today, like leaning the scope up against a barricade or putting your hand, back in the day you couldn't do that. And so even like a heavy branch or something leaning on the
really
scope,
throw your shot off.
or some dirt, getting here can really do it. But they are simple. I mean, they're just dirt simple.
And, when you bought this scope, what did you use it on?
This rifle right here.
The Anschutz.
The Anschutz 1813. And actually at the time, most folks, and again, this was, I know I'm dating myself a bit, this was in the 80s, and a lot of people, were shooting these types of scopes. Now, I haven't been in the small bore game as of late, so I'm really not sure what people are using. But you just shot it 100 yards, and that was that. I mean, you didn't adjust distances, and so this...
Right.
This for a rimfire rifle worked just fine. And then next in my journey was this scope right here.
We bring that up front.
Yeah, and so what this is a Loopholed Mark III, and I bought this back in 2008 because I knew I wanted a bolt action rifle in .308, and the shop that I bought it at said, hey, go with this Loopholed VX3. It's got the varmint reticle, and it's got the 4.5 by 14 power.
And you've got the tactical turrets, right?
Well, there's a story behind that, because the way they come from the factory is they're have capped. those type of turrets that you have to turn with a coin.
Right.
And the reason why I bring the audience's attention to the scope is the first time I was invited to a tactical shoot, I had these little coin slot turrets. And I could maybe make it out to 400 yards, but I had to go more than one revolution, and I was completely lost.
Yep.
But fortunately, with many of the Loopholed scopes, you can send them into Loopholed, and they will actually install these target turrets. So for, at the time, maybe $120, I was able to send it in, get these target turrets installed, and I shot with the scope for a couple of years. And I made first round hits at 1,000 yards with it.
Did it perform like you wanted it to?
Well, I didn't know any better at the time. I mean,
Okay.
it was like the first scope I had. Like I said, I could take it out to 1,000 yards. Now, most of the shooting was down in California, so you had lots of light. So the fact that, you know, it just has a small objective, I think that's like a 35 millimeter objective.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, it's certainly not 40. It worked. I mean, it was just fine, and it got the job done. And so, for somebody getting into the sport, if you can find a bolt action rifle, and even if you have like an old a VX3 sitting around, send it into Loopholed. You can upgrade it, and you can at least get in the game.
Yeah. Well, in fact, I've seen, you know, this is what I would expect to see typically on a hunter's rifle.
And
Very,
that's
very
what I
popular.
got it.
Yeah.
Because when I got my bolt action rifle, I just knew I wanted a bolt action rifle. I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do with it. And then one day when I was at the range, shooting at 100 yards, which seemed like a long distance, somebody said to me, "Hey, we're having these tactical matches." Right? So I was like, "Oh, wow. You know, I'd like to."
Well, the truth is, if you're new to the game, you don't just take what you have, right? I've seen folks show up to our local match with nothing more to duplex scope.
And it works.
And it works.
And it works.
Yeah.
And it works. And people ask us all the time, what do I have to do to get ready for a match? What do I have to buy? And honestly, I made that mistake. If you look at some of our equipment videos, is I thought before I could shoot my first match, I'd have to get all cooled up and everything. And that was a big mistake. Yeah, so just show up.
Yeah.
Show up.
Bring your rifle
and
and
bring
ammo.
what you and just bring what you have. Okay. So then after I got this scope, a friend of mine, it's a Loopholed Mark IV, and this is the 6.5 by 20, and it's got the mil dot reticle, but it's second focal plane. It's not front focal plane.
Mil dot reticle.
Yeah, it's a mil dot. No, yes, it's a mil dot reticle, but
MOA
the turrets, but MOA turrets.
Yeah.
And this was a fine scope.
Ton of them out there. I had one as well.
Yeah.
Mine was the 8 by 25, but yeah.
But it didn't take long for me to realize that I needed a first focal plane scope, and the mil dot reticle just didn't cut it.
It's interesting you mentioned that, because when I bought my Loopholed Mark IV, this is, you know, the mid 2000s. That was considered kind of cutting edge. I was like state of the art, and the conventional wisdom was, hey, go with the mil dot reticle. That's what the military's using.
Hey, if the military's using it,
right? And the military was, you know, had deployed the Mark IV as well. So you figured, hey, if they're using it, it must be good. So,
but you bring up a good point. Early on in this game, people were saying, well, if the military does it, then I'm going to do it. So I'm either going to shoot 308 or 300 Win Mag.
Yeah.
Right? But now what we're seeing is people from the military starting to attend these civilian events because we're not constrained by equipment. We can just do whatever we think works. And so now I think sort of the information flow has kind of gone the other way.
Yeah, yeah.
So again, I still use this. I mean, it's a great scope. I mean, it's more of a utility scope for me. But again, this was one of the scopes I use. I still think Loopholed's scope caps, they're the best out there. I mean,
well, debatable. I like them. They're good. Yeah, the aluminum ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they're just.
Yeah.
I mean, I wish there was an option like this on some of my other scopes. So I would say about 2 years ago, when the bug really bit me, and I knew I needed a front focal scope, I got the this Night Force, the front focal. It is the 3.5 by 15 power, and I shot this scope up until 6-7 months ago.
Yeah.
And did really well with it.
You did great with it, dude.
Very, very happy with it. But then somebody showed me higher magnification, and I had a problem in that the turrets, because the hash marks were smaller, I was having a problem seeing them, because in middle age my near vision was just falling off a cliff. So I moved away from this. Yeah. I still use it.
Great scope.
Just a terrific scope. I'm not selling. I mean, this is a military grade scope. So then,
and this took its place, right?
Yeah.
So what do we have here?
Yeah. So this is the. I mean, you see these a lot at the matches. It's the Vortex Hd Gen2. And it's with the 1C reticle, which is the mil dot reticle. It's the non
Christmas tree.
Yeah, it's a non-Christmas tree reticle. It's it's just your straight reticle. And this thing goes up. It goes all the way from 4.5 to 27 power. And the interesting thing is when I look through this, I'm like, how in the world did I shoot at 15 power?
Yeah.
Because right now I spend a lot of my time, right around 20 power, or if I'm doing fine what I call paperwork, I usually have it cranked.
I'm usually between about 10 to 20, on most stuff, and then if I'm on paper, I'm zoomed in all the way. So
and so what really attracted me when I had a chance to look at it was just the quality of the optics, the field of view, again front focal. The additional power, and of course the price at $2,500 retail was extremely attractive.
Now these have gone up substantially in price, from what I've heard.
I'm still seeing them online for 20. Okay. Yeah, still seeing them for $2,500. Now they're back ordered. Maybe there's a secondary market where people are willing to pay more. But what I really like about this is these very large dials. They kind of remind me of these telephones for senior citizens that have like the really big numbers on them.
Yeah.
Because these are really spread out, and so the graduations are really easy for me to see without reading glasses.
So here's my question now, because I know when you were considering getting a new scope, in fact, this is roughly the same time I bought my Night Force Beast, you were looking at other options. And so what did you look at, and what made it the deciding factor to go with this versus others that are out there?
So I like the tactile nature of the clicks. They're very well defined. I actually found them better than Night Force. I think has similar click quality, but again the graduations were closer together. I like the clicks a lot better than the Schmidt bender, because in the Schmidts I just found out that sometimes you would do like 1, 2, 3, or at least for me it was easy to overrun it.
Yeah.
Again, the quality of the optics. I found out right here that the parallax setting, the yard markings on the parallax setting are actually very accurate. So and they're numbered versus on the Night Force where they're not numbered. So I kind of liked that feature. And it's very robust. I mean, it's just, when you handle it, it's a heavy scope.
It is. It's on the heavy end.
It's built like a tank, really.
But I like what they did in terms of the size. Compare it to others like a Schmidt bender or even the Beast, which is really long. They fit a lot, into a compact space. It is heavy, like I said. It's very robust, and I think that speaks to probably its durability. And you can't beat the Vortex warranty. It's probably the best in the business. Yeah,
and so I looked at spending $2,500 and getting a scope that now when you go to matches, a lot of people are shooting the scope, so I figured there's a reason for that. So I felt, pretty confident in my purchase. And some of the Night Force and Schmidt bender options Well, I tell you what killed Schmidt-Bender for me was they had this rheostat knob that's on the left side.
Yeah.
And for many left-hand shooters, you hit it. You hit it with your hand. And I know some folks who are left-handed shooters who've sent them back to actually have that rheostat.
Jake Vibber did that.
Right.
Yep.
So I was not going to spend that type of money for a scope only to pay them, because they don't do it for free, and pay them to remove a feature that, at least for a left-handed shooter, is why they put it there. And
well, it's funny you mentioned it, because
I mean, Loopholed, they were smart enough to at least put it out of the way of a left-handed shooter's hand.
Yeah. Well, limited reticle, I've found very few instances where I've actually used a feature. I mean, when I do use it, it's appreciated, but 9 times out of 10, I'm not using it.
But for that type of money, I want to use every feature, right? And I tell you, the illuminated reticle controls on the Vortex scope are also very nice. You can adjust the power of the illumination. On the Night Force scope, it does have an illuminated reticle, but in order to adjust the power, you actually have to go in there and play around with a little rheostat setting. In other words, you can't
the Digiloom feature on the new scopes from Night Force no longer has that functionality. So
hopefully that answered your question.
But looking forward, there's a lot of good scopes out there. If you were to consider upgrading, or if you're recommending other high-end scopes to folks, what would you tell them to take a look at in addition to what we have here?
I like the Night Force lineup. You shoot a Night Force. We'll discuss that later. So I think when you look at what's on the firing line these days, you see these Vortex scopes. You also see the Bushnell scopes. Again, probably for somebody that's a little more budget minded, I would encourage them to look at that.
Collis, US Optics.
Those again, all good scopes. But right now, when I shoot this, I don't say, I wish there was something different. I feel complete with it. I'm happy with it, and we're going to build up some trainer rifles, and
what are you going to put on that?
I'm just going to put the same scope. Oh. Yeah, that's my plan so far. Again, can always change.
All things subject to change,
but at least for now,
right.
Very, very happy with it.
Well, good. Awesome. Why don't we take a look at what I've got in the lineup?
Absolutely.
Okay, we'll be right back.
All right, welcome back. Now we're going to take a look at some of the scopes that Steve has used over the years.
Yeah, exactly. So, starting off with kind of the basic that I still have on here is, this is my 22, Ruger 1022. I use it as a trainer. It's been accurized, number of upgrades. The scope I decided to put on this is the Bushnell Elite Tactical Firefly in 3:9. It's basically got a duplex reticle. It has really good magnification and eye relief across the entire zoom range. For a 22, this is really all you need. So, I think this optic I ended up paying $250, $300 for a number of years ago. Great scope. At one point, I did have this optic on 22s. I bought this a number of years ago and actually threw this on a centerfire bolt action rifle. This is
that looks like a bit pretty beefy for a 22.
Well, you may recognize this, and you'll always see questions about this scope. This is the Millet 4-16x50 rifle scope. Folks think there's a lot of bang for the buck here. Right up front, I'll tell you, don't go there. Don't go here.
And usually we don't have opinions that strong.
We don't. And you'll see, if you ask on the forums, folks will say, hey, what about this Millet, the TRS Millet 4-16? Hey, I speak from experience. You can read a really good, or listen to a really good in-depth review by John McQuay of 8541 Tactical. He also reviewed the scope in detail. I won't go into the same depth that he has, but for the money, it's not bad. For a 22, it works. It would not really feel the need for a good optic if you're looking at competing with it in PRS style or tactical precision matches. Some of the drawbacks, number one, it's a second focal plane reticle. It uses what they call a milled dot bar reticle, which has a combination of milled dots and slash marks. You would typically think the slash marks are the half mil marks. They're not. It's full mills. You'll get a full mill at a bar, full mill at a dot, full mill at a bar. So it's kind of confusing, right? So they kind of break from tradition that way. Secondly, the eye relief at full mag, your eyeball is literally resting on the ocular. So
what could go wrong there, Steve?
Well, I'll tell you, I found that out when I put on that 30-06. Let's just say that.
Well, was there a visit to the
I had a nice blue ring around my eye for a while.
So what are you going to do with this? What are the plans?
It's been sitting in my safe like that for a couple of years. I may throw it on there on maybe a fun gun, but this is not a real serious scope. Let's be honest. The other drawback is you've got somewhat of a mill dot bar reticle. You've got ammo weight turrets, right? So that doesn't match. The other thing, if you're using the reticle for any type of mill range estimation, right, you would think that typically those marks correspond to a full mag, right? That's the convention out there. Not so on this. You'll feel, when you get to the 10 mark, feel that. See if you can feel a detent there.
Oh yeah.
A very slight detent. And there's a dot. That detent is there because what that indicates is now those dots correspond to a full mill, right? So if you're using it for any type of mill range estimation, you have to have it at that detent or that 10 mark. Again, it's a break from tradition. It's not standard. Other than that, it tracks pretty good.
Yeah, so that's okay. So obviously, from a user standpoint, there's certain aesthetic things you don't like. I don't know if
aesthetics is okay. Functionality. The thing is,
function, but it works though, right? It still works. It tracks. It works.
It tracks.
You can hit stuff.
You can hit stuff.
It's repeatable.
For the money, it's okay, but the way it was designed,
right.
They kind of break from kind of known standards and traditions.
Okay.
So it can be confusing if you don't kind of fully read and understand the owner's manual. It can be a little bit confusing to use.
So it's really more the break from tradition, but otherwise mechanically what a scope's supposed to do.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So if you do come across one, you can still use it.
You can still use it. Just keep in mind, guys, that it's
just annoyances.
Yeah, it's annoyances.
It's more annoyances.
It's more of a fun gun or a fun gun rifle than a serious scope.
Okay.
We'll go over here to this guy. So what you see here, this is my 6.5 Grendel. So keeping the 6.5 guys thing going on here. What I have it topped off with is a Bushnell HDMR. This is a 3.5 to 21 power by 50 objective scope, 5 mils per rev, locking turrets, fantastic scope for the money. So you can usually find these used for under $1,000. I bought this a number of years brand new. What I paid about $1,500, $1,600. It's on a LaRue mount. But with the HDMR, you get the reticle that I'm fond of. So it has a Horus H59 reticle. I know guys aren't crazy necessarily, either love it or don't like it. But it's a very functional scope. Optics are good. It's a great value for the money. And for this platform, it's just what it's a great fit. Yeah,
and I think for the value-oriented buyer, this is probably a good purchase. And just from my perspective, what I said I liked about the Vortex was just the clicks. Saying here, very nice positive clicks, and the turret here is very easy to read.
Yeah.
So I like that.
Yeah, you're not going to get the 10 mils per rev, but I mean it's very easy to find your come up on your dial very easily. It locks. When you're on the second rev, there's an indicator, on the turret.
So we see a lot of these on the firing line.
You do, yeah. This if you're just starting out in tactical precision, and you're kind of limited on funds, I would definitely point you to a model like this.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I agree. Good.
All right, so next up is, why don't we go to this scope over here. This is a scope I bought about 3 years ago. At the time, it was considered kind of on the high end of scopes. This is the 2nd gen Premier 5 to 25 by 56. Typically, this sits on my 338 Lipo Magnum. So Premier has since been sold. They're now owned by a company out of Canada that
Tangent Theta, right?
Tangent Theta.
Yeah, we saw them at SHOT Show.
Yeah, so you'll see a lot of similarities between the design of the Premier and the Tangent Theta. The internals are completely different, so we talked to the folks at Tangent Theta. It is a different scope, but aesthetically it does look the same. But this is a fantastic scope. Optically, I'd put it right up there with the Schmidt and Bender, among the best out there. The reticle it uses is a Gen2 XR, which is basically kind of a hybrid between kind of a Mildot and a Horus. But you've got huge amounts of elevation. I think it was 130, 20, let's take a look here.
Well, while you do that, just from
30 MRADs of elevation, which I would never use on anything that I shoot.
Yeah, and so while you say this is a very good scope, I don't doubt it. Just from my perspective,
Yeah.
some of the things I liked, like these clicks, see, already I did like.
Well,
yeah,
the reason why, the way you find it, this is what they call an MTC turret, so more tactical clicks. So on the full clicks, you'll feel a thunk. It naturally wants to stop on a full mil,
right.
So it's very easy to find your full mil, but you have very fine graduations right. on the dial, so it's very easy to see where you're at. Generally, what I'll do is over dial by like a 0.1 click and then just come back.
Yeah. Okay.
So again, the other nice feature that this scope has is it's very easy to zero out your turrets just by putting in a piece of brass under this lever, right, which unlocks it. You basically spin it to 0 and then lock it.
That is actually a nice feature.
Out.
That is a nice feature.
But so this scope here, I ended up paying, around $3,000, if I recall correctly. Bought it new off of Euro Optic. And so it sits on my 338 LM.
Yeah, so I mean, it deals well with a pretty punishing round. So
from there, this is my first Arbros rifle I got, and what I put on here was the ubiquitous Schmidt & Bender PM2 5 to 25 by 56. I didn't realize it was so scratched up. This is one that I bought off of Mile High Shooting Supply, and I actually got a good deal on it.
Great folks, by the way, Mile High.
Thumbs up. So this one, again, has a Horus reticle, H58 in this case. Usually it's about a $300 to $400 upgrade. They were clearing this out because it was an H58, not an H59. So they gave me a deal on it, and this is before the price increase on the Schmidts. So I ended up getting this for around $2,800. It's been sitting in a spur mount. So, I probably can't tell you stuff about this scope that you guys don't already know. This is kind of the gold standard in terms of high-end scopes. Really like it. Great glass. The main thing that Ed had mentioned that's probably a drawback for folks, and for me as well, it does have the Mtc Clicks. They're not as kind of audible as on the Premier, but you can still feel the full clicks on the clunks on the full mils and the small clicks on the 0.1 mils. It's very easy to over dial. So I found in matches where you're under a time constraint, trying to find kind of that specific come up on your elevation can be a little bit annoying.
There's that, and the hash marks are just really, really small. So I quite frankly have a difficult time seeing them.
Okay.
And then just so the viewers can see what we were talking about earlier is you've got this rheostat right here.
For lefties, you're going to hit that.
Yeah, you're just going to hit that, and so.
Yeah. Other than that, fantastic optic.
Absolutely.
Then from there, because I got another rifle this season, I figured, why bounce the scope back and forth between rifle platforms? I'll just get a new optic. I went with the Night Force Schmidt, or a Night Force Beast. This is again a 5 to 25 by 56. Here you've got 20 full mils per rev, 30 on the dial, plus or minus 6 on the windage. This is different because it's 0.2 mils per click, and it has a plus 0.1 throw lever. Has never been an issue finding my right dope on the dial. I've never gotten confused. It's very fast, very easy. I've thrown on.
But the lever. I mean, some people like it. So, what's now that you've played around with the lever? If I heard you right, would you do it again? I mean, if you had a choice of getting this scope with 0.1 clicks and no lever, or as they have now 0.2 and a lever, which way would you go if you could have?
What I found is with the lever, it has nothing to do with the usability of actually using it. Is sometimes zeroing it out. There's an extra step to zero out your dial using the lever, and you need to kind of keep track of how many times you went up versus down and zeroing, because it does have a limited amount of movement. I think it's 0.8 mils going up or down. So if you max out in one way as you zero and zero it over again, you have to kind of reverse everything. I don't know if that makes sense to you guys.
I'm confused, but
But to answer your question is, would I buy the scope again versus anything else out there?
Or would you get an attacker?
Why not? Well, it's the money, right? I mean, the attacker's almost the identical scope. What's different is the internals, right? Optically, it's the same scope. For the money, yeah, I would get the attacker because it's a great value. But I'm also I would call myself a glassware. I mean, I always love trying new scopes. So, if I could get a good deal on something equally good optically, I wouldn't mind trying it out. So, if that makes sense. Yeah, so why did I go with this versus getting another Schmidt? One, the price, right? The Schmidts went up to around $4.5 grand. I ended up buying this around $3,800. So I'm saving money there. As far as the glass is concerned, I actually found this one to be a slightly more contrasty. But again, that's my eyes. I wouldn't necessarily say, that's going to be this true for everybody looking through the scopes, but for me that owns both of them, my preference is towards this. I don't know if it's contrast or color, but for me, I just like the way things look better through this glass, although the Schmidt's, a fantastic scope.
And the zoom lever you got for this was a...
Yeah, it's actually a really cool product. This is the Breakaway cattail scope adjuster, Breakaway coasters. So they come in a package of 2. These run about $16 for the package. So you're paying about $8 for this. So
it can go on any scope then.
So it can go on any scope. Yeah. So there's a few things about this that I liked as well, which is the reticle on here was the H59, different than the H58. Which on the H59 you're getting an extra 2 mils of windage on the Christmas tree, and you get a floating dot. So the crosshairs are actually broken in the center, and there's a floating dot where it's solid on the H58, which if you have a very fine target, like let's say you're shooting real small dots on paper, it can actually obscure the target. So
yeah, the floating dot I like. Yeah. I actually wish that the Vortex would have that, and so as you've learned, you can't get everything you want with every scope. But yeah, if I could make my own reticle, it would have that floating dot.
Yeah. So, if are there other scopes out there I wouldn't mind trying. I don't know if I'd pay the money. I wouldn't mind trying them out for a couple of months. I've always wanted to. Yeah, I've always wanted to try a Collis, and I wanted to try the new the Shannon K. Miller reticle. Looks pretty cool, so I'd like to check that out. Our friend Jake shoots for US Optics. You know, although I've gotten behind some of their scopes and never actually used one.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind trying one out as well.
Yeah.
So then, kind of turn the tables on you. You'd kind of ask me the question, like, you know, if it wasn't the Vortex, you know, what would you go with? And so, you know, we're building up some trainers, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what are you thinking about from an optics perspective?
Like you said, I'm actually thinking about the Attacker F1. Same scope, right? And for the distance we practice in on a trainer rifle, you know, why spend the money for something like this when I can pretty much get the same thing in the Attacker F1? So that's kind of where my thinking's at right now.
Again, subject to change.
Subject to change.
Subject to change. Okay, well, hopefully you found this overview useful. Again, this is just, you know, kind of our journey. And
yeah. Oh, hey, one other thing
Yeah.
I wanted to mention. Yeah, 2 other scopes that you don't have here that have since been sold off. I'm
holding it now.
I have had the. Well, I'll throw up a couple of B-roll pictures from kind of glamour shots I took back in the day. I did have a Mark IV, Loopholed Mark IV, the 8 to 25, but I actually had a Bors on there, the Barrett Bors. I don't know if you guys know what that is. That's the Barrett optical ranging system. What it is it's an integrated ballistic calculator that measures temperature, barometric pressure, as well as rifle cant. And it fully integrates with the turret system so that once you have your target in the reticle and you know the distance, you can actually dial the distance. Let's say it's at 1,200 yards. You dial the distance on the computer till it reads 1,200, and it will. It does all the calculations on the fly, so you will basically be on target. The trajectory of that rifle once it's programmed in, because there's a calculator behind it, so you have to tell it, you know, what you're shooting and all of that, and it'll make the correct calculations on the screen.
Yeah, I remember seeing that when you had that.
So it was kind of an interesting thing to play around with. This is just when I was getting into long range precision. I thought it'd be kind of an interesting device, but when I actually brought it out to matches, didn't prove to be so helpful. So I quickly sold that off. You know, for the folks that may not be in the matches but are, you know, kind of are interested in long range precision and want to take some of the voodoo out of it, I thought it was a nice stepping stone.
So you'd mentioned you had one other scope.
Yeah, I also had a Bushnell Xr. So when I sold off the Loopholed Mark IV, I was looking for a replacement to put on my 30-06. I bought a Bushnell XRS off a friend. Great scope for the money. Bushnell really offers some of the best value on the market for rifle scopes. And you know, I didn't really use the high end of that 30 power. You probably won't in most situations in a PRS style match. What I found it good for, though, was particularly spotting for somebody else that's shooting, as well as just looking at mirage, because you do have that high-end power. For the money, though, great scope, but I ended up selling it not because I didn't like the scope, but I ended up selling the rifle and the optic as a package deal. And
for paperwork, too, I think the 30 power would be pretty good. You know,
absolutely.
Checking your zero. Okay, well, folks, hopefully you found that useful. If you're looking for a really comprehensive review about mechanics and some actual testing of scopes, check out Carl Zant's Precision Rifle blog, where he did a pretty comprehensive review. But hopefully you found just our journey and with certain scopes and just our likes, dislikes of certain makes and models useful, and you can take those into consideration when you're purchasing an optic.
Yeah, if you like this video, again, please like, share, and subscribe. Leave your comments on YouTube. And be sure to follow us on Twitter and look for the write-up on our website.
Absolutely, www.65guys.com. Remember, folks, life's an adventure.
Stay on target.